Hey guys, uh, so I can't be there because I have our town hall. There's a small chance I will get out in time to be a little late, but just in case I don't make it, I attempted to type a text out. It was really long. I apologize. So I'm going to try to make this really quick. Anybody that's seen my videos knows that if I don't have notes, I go full Lex Meyer and my thing turns into a 3-hour sermon. So, I did take notes on chapter 3, and I had just a few thoughts I wanted to share, so I thought I would just make this quick video, throw it in the chat, to share my thoughts on the chapter. If you guys want to talk about anything, either in the thread or just want to bring some stuff up amongst yourselves, that's great, but I am really bummed that I'm going to miss this one because I really enjoyed this chapter. It's chapter 3, make friends with people who want the best for you. So I'm just going to jump right into my notes. Add a little bit of scripture that came to mind. So, as far as all of this, the first thing I had on here was how do we view ourselves and how do we view our own self-worth? That was one of the first things that kind of stood out to me in this chapter, was basically the view that we have of ourselves and how it actually affects us. Sometimes when people have a low opinion of their own worth, or perhaps when they refuse responsibility for their lives, they choose a new acquaintance of precisely the type who proved troublesome in the past. Such people don't believe that they deserve any better, so they don't go looking for it, or perhaps they don't want the trouble of better. And then down here, it's partly inability, it's partly unwillingness to learn, refusal to learn, just constant failure. Basically, what I got out of that is, are we refusing to learn, grow, change? Have we given up? And the thing I was thinking about with that is, are we willing to take responsibility? Because at the end of the day, no one, I think I mentioned it last week, but, if you die poor, broken, if you're born poor, broken, destitute, 100% not your fault. If you die poor, broken, destitute, it's 100% your fault. Even in the scriptures we see all the time, his blessing to generation after generation, to those who love me. I even was reading, I'm in 1 Kings when the kingdom is transferring over to Solomon, and it talked about, when God was talking to Solomon, or no, I believe God was talking to David. Basically, he was saying, like, if your son continues to love and obey me, his kingdom will be established. Chapter 2, verse 4, that Yahweh may fulfill his word which he spoke concerning me, saying, if your sons take heed to their way, to walk before me in truth with all their heart and with all their soul, he said, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel. So a lot of times we play victims is what I'm getting out of this. But of course, the very next thing I had on here is not everyone who's failing is a victim. Not everyone who's at the bottom wishes to rise, although many do and manage it. And it's also talking about discerning who actually wants to improve and who is just perpetuating that victim mindset. Are we willing to take responsibility? And then as I was reading this, I realized, who we surround ourselves with matters. Will we make the easy choices and just kind of let life happen to us? Or are we going to make the right choice, which is going to come with difficulty, but in the end, it's going to bear, if we want to get scriptural, it's going to bear the fruit of righteousness. It's through much tribulation that we enter the kingdom. And I just kept tying this back to all this stuff in scripture. Let me see here. And then when it comes to discerning who we're helping, are you so sure the person crying out to be saved has not decided 1,000 times to accept his lot of pointless and worsening suffering simply because it's easier than shouldering any true responsibility? Are we enabling delusion when we basically allow poor behavior, if that makes sense? And then I like how they said, you're associating with people who are bad for you, not because it's better, but because it's easier. You've decided to sacrifice the future for the present, and you ignore that. Um, and I also like when he's talking about like helping other people. It talks about using that discernment. Before you help someone, you should find out why that person is in trouble. And I tied that back to the scriptures about, dealing with the root of the problem. You know what I mean? I put down your future is determined in part by your choices in the present. Failure is easy. Success takes conscious decision. Do you want to improve? Is the first thing you need to ask. And then we must lead by example. And like the scripture talks about, is being the light. And now I wasn't part of the church community for this Sukkot back in 2020. I believe, Adam, I know you were there, so you'll have to correct me on this if I'm wrong. I believe it was 2020 when you guys had that Sukkot where the idea of Kazakh, be strong. And that's actually something here in my evening reading I had tonight was chapter 2 of Kings. And it starts out with David's instructions for Solomon. Now the days of David drew near that he should die, and he charged Solomon his son, saying, I go the way of all the earth, be strong, Kazakh. And therefore, be strong, Kazakh. Therefore, and prove yourself a man, and keep the charge of Yahweh your God, to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes, his commandments, his judgments, his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that you may prosper in all that you do and wherever you turn. And I kind of tied that into this idea of, do you want to improve? Do you want to surround yourself with people? Are you willing to be the light for God and be the light to others? And it takes that Kazakh, it takes that courage, it takes the decision, to bring order to your chaos, chapter 2, to stand up straight with shoulders back, chapter 1. And also from a biblical perspective, it's the idea of love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. We have to keep our focus on God, keep our focus on who he's called us to be. And I like how in here he talks about, how failing is easy. It's far more likely than that a given individual has just decided to reject the path upward because of its difficulty. Perhaps they should even be your default assumption when faced with such a situation. But consider this, failure is easy to understand. No explanation for its existence is required. In the same manner, fear, hatred, addiction, promiscuity, betrayal, deception require no explanation. Vice is easy. Failure is easy too. It's easier not to shoulder a burden. It's easier not to think, not to do, not to care, to put off till tomorrow what needs to be done today and drown the upcoming months and years in today's cheap pleasures. I mean, that makes me think of the prodigal son who wanted his inheritance now and then squandered it in the world because he wanted the easy path. He didn't want to work for it. And I think we've all been faced with things in our lives where it's not easy, but it's worth it. It's not easy to do things, and it's not always enjoyable. But the scripture does say in this world you'll have tribulation, but be of good cheer, I've overcome the world. And in our own personal lives, we have to make that decision. And who we surround ourselves with matters. Community matters. And then when you decide who to surround yourself with and you decide to succeed or fail, we're called to be good stewards. We're called to decide, choose this day who you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve Yahweh. And then with the people that we surround ourselves with, something I really liked in here, let me see if I wrote it down. The desire to improve, was instead the precondition for progress. So people have to want to improve. Maybe instead of continuing our friendship, I should just go off somewhere and get my act together and lead by example. I like how he said, like, if you wouldn't recommend a certain type of friend for your family, why would you recommend that person for yourself? You should choose people who want things to be better, not worse. And this is a part I triple starred in the chapter. If you surround yourself with people who support your upward aim, they will not tolerate your cynicism and destructiveness. They will instead encourage you when you do good for yourself and others and punish you carefully when you do not. This will help bolster your resolve to do what you should do in the most appropriate and careful manner. It's for this reason that every good example is a faithful challenge, every hero a judge. You could be more than you are. When you dare aspire upward, you reveal the inadequacy of the present and the promise of the future. And so with that, I was looking in here, growth is painful, but it's worth it. You have to walk in faith and in hope and walk with that. Paul talks about with looking at salvation, that's coming. He talks about like the idea of an arrow, hitting the mark, like running the race set before you. And it's keeping that vision, that focus that's going to keep us on that path of success versus failure. And of course, I wrote Kazakh again. It takes conscious, continuous, daily choice to grow, choice to surround ourselves with people that desire the best for us. And it requires strength and daring to stand up near such a person. When it talks about having good, healthy people in your life, it requires strength and daring to stand up near such a person, have some humility, have some courage, use judgment, make friends with people who want the best for you. And again, like the scripture talks about, that things aren't always going to be easy. They're worth it. In this world, you'll have tribulation. The Father prunes those that he loves. And I love how in this chapter it talks about that self-responsibility, that the self-examination, I guess, is a good point that I got from that is, we can decide who we surround ourselves with. Business world, you're the average of the 5 or 6 people you hang around the most. What you listen to, what you watch, where you go, what you do, it has an effect on us, and we have to keep that in mind. Die daily to ourselves, daily audit ourselves, daily be in the Word, sharpening our sword, so that we can have that discernment and that wisdom when we go out and about during the day. So for me, I think this was a really cool chapter because it just like this whole book is really causing us to self-audit, and I like that. And I'll be the first to admit that I've not always been the best at this. Even since moving to Oklahoma, there's been times where I have just kicked myself when I'm down. Nobody else has had to do it. I've done it myself. I've had those days where I just wanted to give up, where I'm just like, what's the point? But as a good brother of mine has, spoken in my ear countless times since I've met him, you're not allowed to quit. Are you going to quit on those who love you? Are you going to quit on the calling that God's placed in your life? Are you going to quit on your future family? Are you going to quit on yourself? And it takes that decision that, Sal, you know this, like, I'm going to build that barn. I don't know how, I don't know when, like, I don't know anything other than the fact that I know I am going to build that barn and nothing's going to stop me from doing it. And it's the same thing that, I had highlighted in this chapter. It talks about, where was it here? Oh man, I'm sorry guys. I'll make this as quick as I can. Where was it? It was the idea, sorry, this is a really good chapter. I can't find it, but it was a thing about basically what you're doing. Here it is. You could be more than you are. When you dare aspire upward, you reveal the inadequacy of the present and the promise of the future. It's promise. Abraham, believed in the promise. He believed the promises of God and walked in faith. And so it's like back to that idea. I don't know how I'm going to build that barn. I just know I'm going to do it. And with God as my witness, with God as my strength, it's going to happen. And we have to have that mindset, we have to have that mindset that God is with us. And if he has placed a calling in our life, nothing's going to stop the promise of God. Paul was confident that until God was done with him, nothing could touch him. Paul was confident that until his mission for God was done, he had nothing to fear. The idea of Solomon, like Kazakh, be strong and courageous. And so I just really love that it's an encouragement and it's a reminder that we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to those around us to not give up, to be mindful of who we spend our time around, what we spend our time doing, knowing that we are going to give account to this to the Father, to our Messiah one day. We're going to stand before him and give an account for everything that we've chosen to do. And I think it's a call to action. The call to action, not only to choose this day who we will serve, but what are we going to do with the talents that he has given us? What are we going to do with all of this? Again, like I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it. Like, have that determination. Be in the Word, be in prayer, be in fasting, be purposeful. Build your house on the rock of promise, the rock of truth, the rock of determination, the rock of order amidst chaos, not on the sand. It's earlier in the book. Actually, it might have been in the last book I read. It was the idea of dreamers versus visionaries. Dreamers talk about it all the time and don't do anything. Visionaries see the vision, talk about it, then create plans and steps to get to that point. And I don't know about you guys, but I want to be a visionary, not a dreamer. I want to surround myself with those who want the best for me. And yeah, I know that means sometimes I'm not going to like what's said. I'm not. None of us do. But if it's in love and if it's for my good, then we have to humble ourselves and be willing to accept that, and then self-audit and decide, where do I go from here with it? And I'm so sorry, guys, it's 16 minutes long. I don't even know if this is going to send. We're going to try it anyway. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the chapter. Sorry. I really wish I could be there with you guys. I'm praying that this meeting goes quicker than expected. It's at 6 o'clock Tuesday night. I'm praying that I might be able to get out of there and be there no later than like 7:30, I would hope. We'll see. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Choose, be focused, have Kazakh. Yeah,